Welcome to the Fighter's Voice. I'm your host, Don McGuire. As you can see in front of me, the two-time current strawweight champion of the world, the Cookie Monster, Miss Carla Esparza. How you doing?
Hey, what's up? I am doing great, especially with this wonderful belt right here. I finally got my nameplate on the side right here, so it's super cool.
Yeah, yeah. You see, my show's a little bit different. You know, Colin Oyama's been on it. Most of Team Oyama's been on my show. It's kind of a reflection show. We kind of take bits and parts of your life and then correlate it into a show. But the thing that I don't know, I've never really been nervous. I've had legends on my show before, but I've been wanting you on my show for so long, and then finally, me and Coach were talking the other night, and this correlated, and so it kind of caught me off guard. But it's an honor and a privilege to have you on here. You know,
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
well, it's different because a lot of people don't know how to take my show, but I want to start it off because you have a lot more to your resume than most people think. And I like to ask reflection shows on, reflection questions on people that built us. So when you look back in your early days, how much did Lee Allen instill in you? Because you got an opportunity through a scholarship, and Lee Allen played a major role in your life. What was it like for Lee Allen to give the knowledge, his expertise to a young Carla Esparza?
I say Leanne, obviously he has the wrestling credentials. It's one thing to learn wrestling, but I think really, what really helped me grow was just his expertise as a leader. He's worked and coached so many like Olympic level teams. Like he knows how to build programs, make things happen where you wouldn't think they would. I mean, he himself made history as the only or the first wrestler to go to the Olympics for Greco and
Yeah.
freestyle. So, it was just an honor like to be there on the mats with him. You just kind of he was a humble guy. He didn't like say a lot, but he just was easygoing. He's like, oh, this is how it's going. He had a good sense of humor, and like it just gave you like, hey, this isn't so serious. We're just here. We're here to compete. We're here to do our thing. And yeah, I mean, I love that he gave us that platform. He started the women's wrestling program at Menlo, so he really gave us a platform when not a lot of people did.
Yeah. See, I like to bring up aspects like that because, a lot of people think that poof, a fighter just appears out of nowhere. It's usually the early mentors that add value to you. But there was another mentor in your life that came into the sports scene via Shannon Knapp. She was one of the first promoters in the history of the sport that believed in the women, wanted to correlate a path just, strategically for the women. What was it like for you to get that call on that first opportunity with Shannon Knapp and Invicta Fighting Championships, Carla?
To be honest, Invicta was very new when I came into it. I didn't really know what to think. I was in Bellator at the time. And, I've always listened to my coach, Colin Oyama. And, I was, I'm like, this is this new promotion. It's all women. To be honest, like, I had never seen anything like that in the U.S. On a big scale like that. And I was like, wow, almost like a little skeptical. I was very hopeful because that meant great things for women, including myself. But I was like, how is this going to go off? And I remember seeing like their first show, and it was such an amazing show. And, she kind of believed in it and created something before anybody, had even like fathomed something like that. People are like, one show, one fight, female fight on a card, maybe two, like we can do that. But a whole fight of female cards, who's going to watch that? Nobody's going to watch that. But she just believed in herself. She believed in the female fighters, and she made it happen. And she made believers out of everybody by, blowing out the circuits, when people were trying to watch the show. Like, I think multiple shows got like, you couldn't even watch it because there were so many people trying to tune in.
Yeah. Well, the opportunity that Shannon gave you was tremendous because you became the first Invicta Strawweight champion in history. And I'm going to get to that in a second because Sammy Carr, a good friend out of mine out of Colorado, he says, congrats on the wedding, Carla. My man, you get all the best interviews my dude. Well, it's
Yes,
called.
thank you.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that in a little bit. But the thing of it is, Shannon Knapp created this opportunity for you, and like we talked, because I'm transparent, we talked a little bit before we went live, and then you left Invicta because you got an opportunity with Tough, and you went into the 16 woman bracket, and you ended up in the finale with Doug Rose, and you came out victorious, and then you became the UFC first strawweight champion. I mean, so if you just look at those two aspects of your career, I mean, that's really incredible. I don't know any other athlete that can say they became the first strawweight champion in one promotion, came over to the next promotion, and became the first strawweight champion in that promotion. Now, Carla, when you sit back and you look over your shoulder, just at that aspect of your life, what does it truly mean to you that you've accomplished two titles, first time in the history of the United States, and now you're the current champion again against the same individual? So I mean, that's kind of crazy. But when you look back over your shoulder, what does it mean to you knowing that if it wasn't for Shannon Knapp and the opportunities that she gave you, you wouldn't be sitting in front of me? Not necessarily, but you might not be sitting in front of me today. So when you
Yeah,
look back over your shoulder, what does it truly mean to you?
I mean, for me, it means I think it has to be a perfect storm. A perfect storm. The stars have to align because if Shannon didn't give me the opportunity and things didn't align how they did, I mean, I may not even be fighting right now, to be honest. Like it wasn't easy fighting. There weren't many opportunities back in the day, and it takes, it took people like Shannon who really believed in the female fighters and really like try to make it promoted and knew the potential of the female fighters that really made this happen. There's so many people that contributed, but definitely Shannon Knapp was. If you look back in the history of like women's MMA, she is one of the hugest contributors for sure.
Yeah, and the majority of the stock in the UFC today, as far as the women, all come from Invicta. So it says she's doing something right. Sammy Carr, like I said, he brought up your wedding, and we're going to get to that in a moment because there's so much to you. There's a man that you and I both love by the name of Colin Oyama. There's a man that truly, I don't know, his persona, his attitude, his expertise, everything kind of correlates into one person. And if you know Colin like I know you do and I do, then what you see is a tremendous man. He made a statement to me the other night that you were like a daughter to him. What does it mean for someone like Colin Oyama to say you're like a daughter to me, but not only live it, but be it, and the knowledge that that man has given you in life is tremendous. What is that relationship like between Carla Esparza and Colin Oyama? Because I love the man to death. I think he's one of the greatest coaches in the history of the sport. So, what do you take away from that one-on-one with him?
I mean, there's so much Coach Oyama has given to me, like as a mentor, as a coach, and just every way. I mean, he's definitely like a father. I definitely feel like we have that connection, that closeness. Like, I mean, we've been side by side for like 16 years, and through the highs, through the lows, he's given me advice. I wouldn't be here where I am today with Coach Oyama. I mean, he's one of the closest people in my life, and I couldn't imagine, my career or even my life without him because he's just, such an amazing human being and coach. Like, people see the tough exterior, but he's definitely like tough and rough around the edges. But he's like deep down, he has like the biggest heart of anybody. He's always helping people. Like he won't even say anything, but you'll find out years later he was helping someone who was in the hospital or some kid who like was struggling or something. Like he just always has a big heart for so many people and takes care of, not only fighters, but just people in his life. And he's just, just an awesome human. And I feel very grateful to have had his guidance. Even when I didn't see it in the moment, he'd be like, do this or go to Invicta or like, don't do this show or don't do that. I'm like, I don't know. Like I kind of would, my head second guess it, but I'm like, he's my coach. I got to listen and just sure as like every time, it was just he always was leading me down the right path. He just has such a wiseness about him.
Yeah, he really does. He came into my life several years ago, and when I was dealing with cancer, and then I got COVID on top of that. He called me and he's like, "Bro, you let my phone ring." And one day I called and I let it ring like 4 or 5 times, and they're busy, so I felt bad, so I hung up. And about an hour and a half later, he calls me back. He says, "Didn't I tell you to let my phone ring?" And I was like, yeah." And then I mean, he just ripped me a new one. But the thing about it was, if it wasn't for him, I never would have made it through aspects of my cancer or COVID, because he turned me on to watermelon. And I couldn't eat anything, but he said, "Don, if I could get you to eat anything, just eat watermelon. It's going to help you." And we were laughing about this the other night, because watermelon truly did help save my life, because I couldn't keep anything down but watermelon. And
Yeah.
that man is just he's something else. For the first half of the career that I known him, all you ever see is this much of his face. He never shows his face in a picture, but
Yeah, Coach
he's
is
such.
so humble. Like he doesn't look for credit. He's not all about the hype. If anything, like I think he gets turned off by like athletes who are in the room and they're more focused on like their selfies and looking cool on on camera than actually showing up to training and working hard. And he's just always had that mentality, always been humble, and I think he works well with people who just put in the work.
Yeah. Let me let a few of these comments out of the way, because everybody's, well, we already got Sammy Carr. Phil Dow says, "Carla's the best. I met her in Chicago and she was nice enough to take a pic with us. Congrats on the wedding."
Thank you.
And then Jonathan Cole says, that year of Tough was one of the best highlighted WMMA. Appreciate you, Jonathan. And then
That's so cool. It was a really cool thing to be a part of, like that first all female season. You didn't really know what to expect going into the shows, but
yeah,
it was definitely fun at moments.
yeah. And Sheriff from Nevada says, "Hello, Don, looking good, brother." And he says, "Thanks. Hey, Carla, I'm a big fan of yours." I think everybody's a big fan of yours. Well, you're the Cookie Monster for one thing. And honestly, I don't get nervous on shows, but I am tonight. But Carla, let's look at it in an analogy, because I like to do things like that. When you left Invicta, let's say you're on bended knee and you had that stone in your hand and you knew you were going into the tough house. You laid that stone down knowing that this was the greatest and the biggest opportunity of your life thus far. What did that first stone truly mean to Carla Esparza moving forward?
Honestly, going into the show, you don't really know what it means. You can't really comprehend what it's like to go from, just like life, normal, like fight life, to like this huge scale of like not only being in the UFC, but like being on this television in front of everybody, kind of laying out your life and your personality, and just not knowing how they're going to portray you or what pieces they're going to put together. And it's definitely like you go from like kind of this to like this huge experience. So I didn't know what it was going to mean. It definitely changed my life. And obviously, winning the first belt really changed my life.
Yeah. See, a lot of people couldn't even handle becoming the first promotion strawweight champion. And I shot tough 17, so I kind of know how plays out and how it works. It's kind of crazy. Zach Cummings is a good friend of mine, and you know, let's look at life as a second stone, because you got your first opportunity in a title fight against Rose Namajunas, and you came out victorious via rear naked choke. And that's going to play into the interview here in a minute. But what was it like? Because I don't know if many people can say this statement. You're considered one of the best strawweights ever in the sport, but you're the only two-time current strawweight champion. But if you really look at it, you're a three-time strawweight champion that's been the first in two different promotions. You know, that right there is something for the history books. That's part of your legacy. What did it mean for you after going in there and against Rose Namajunas in your first fight after tough? What did it mean to know that you put your family's name into history? You cemented your name in the history books, and at that point, you became the first strawweight UFC champion, and nobody can take that from you. Nobody in the sport can have that title other than Carla Esparza. So, what does that moment truly mean to not just the warrior, but the person behind the warrior?
Honestly, it was the best moment of my life. I think especially because the journey was so hard to get there, not only just being
Yeah.
a pioneer and fighting in the middle of nowhere and fighting for no money and, all these crazy, the crazy journey, but then just alone the experience on tough, and like that was such a difficult journey in and of itself. So going from all that just made that victory, and especially a finish, like that much sweeter and that much more satisfying. And just knowing what a big part in history that moment was. And I think I still haven't really like comprehended it. I think maybe years later I'll look back and be like, whoa, that was kind of a big deal. Like now I'm just looking at my next fight all the time. I enjoy the moment, but I definitely am always like looking forward to the future.
Most definitely. Marianne Owen, a good friend of mine, a photographer in boxing and other aspects of the sport from Las Vegas. She says hi from Las Vegas. And then Danny Power Yeager says, great interview with the champ. I'll be rooting you on Saturday, my birthday, and that W again uh, to the Cookie Monster. And
Well, happy birthday.
there's so many things coming in. It's crazy. Brian Holderson says from Canada says great things come in small packages. Marianne says she shared you to all of her groups. Sammy Carr says I feel like that UFC belt would look good on me. He's a joker. He
You
said
want to borrow
he says I'd be like 6 points hotter if I borrowed it for the day. What do you think, Carla?
it?
Oh man, these people are
I'll let you
comical.
try it on.
A great brother of mine and a man who runs his own television episode for racing, Craig Snagner. He's a great friend of Miranda Mavericks. He says, Carla, the champ, and Don the great. Thank you, my brother. Giovanni Gavanzi says, God bless you guys and your families.
Back to
Carla,
you.
you're loved by a lot of people. Professor
I always
Anthony Cruz
appreciate the love.
Cruz says, what was that?
I said I always appreciate the love. Like there's so many amazing fans out there, and like there can be a lot of negativity in the world, and sometimes it's easy to
Yeah.
focus on that, but like when you just see like how many like solid fans and positive people and how much love there is out there, like that really kind of makes this sport like just feel happy and feel good.
It really does. And Professor Anthony Cruz says, great fight, total domination. And then a brother of yours and mine, a man who makes your mouth guard, Mr. Joe
Oh,
Rice says, the Cookie Monster, taking heads and making history.
hey Joe, I just actually tried my new. I got to the gym today and just tried my new pink mouthpiece out. Can't wait. I'm probably gonna go in my next fight with that one. Can't wait.
Yeah. I'm part of Bite Me Mouth Guards too. Joe's been part of my life for about 8, 9 years now, and that's the crazy thing. That's actually, I knew Coleman, and then me and Joe became business partners per se. And then, he said, hey, Don, do you want Coleman on your show? And I knew Coleman because I've been in the sport for 37 years. And I said, yeah, let's have him on the show. He's a great man.
Yeah.
And from that moment on, Coach Oyama's become like a older brother or a father figure to me, even though I'm older than he is. But he tells me what I'm gonna do. It's kind of
He
funny,
doesn't
but
do that, but like we said, Coach is super wise. He has all the good tricks. The watermelon. Ask him about the
oh,
ice
man,
bucket. He loves to tell people to stick their foot
I'm
in that
gonna
ice bucket.
I'm gonna have to try that. Levi Mowerman says, hope you guys are having a great night. Ed Rogers says, she's a fabulous human. God bless.
Oh,
You
thank
know,
you. Back at you.
I think it is, like that, Carla, because you've remained humble. And see, I honestly, I was nervous at the beginning of tonight's show. I mean, I've had Pat Miletich, you name him on here. I even had this great, tremendous man, a Team USA coach, Ryan Blackerby. He says, "Well, Don McGuire, great interview." I gave him an interview last week, and I think it's shows like mine that really need to be a necessity because we share the people behind the warrior, but we also share the warrior. And there's a lot of unsung heroes that go into the correlation of that belt sitting in front of you. And a lot of people don't realize it. And that's what I brought up with Ryan Black Orby, because everybody always wants you when you're in the moment. Everybody always is praising you. But the minute you stumble, the world forgets about you. I've lived that walk many times, and I know you have too. Uh, Guys, comments are crazy. But the thing of it is, Carla, when you look back at the unsung heroes in your life, the ones that have been there since the beginning, the ones, give you that push forward, the ones that hold you up, the ones that stand side by side with you. Those are truly the unsung warriors. They're going to be by your side, whether you win, lose, or whatever you want to call it. What do those people truly mean to you, champ? Because those are the ones that truly create us.
Yeah, I mean, most definitely. So for me, I think I try to live a life of appreciation of, not just like who's popular right now or what's in the moment right now, but like looking back at all the people who built you because like you said, it's people like Shannon Knapp who, it wasn't just UFC, like there was nothing before that. There were so many things, so many coaches, like the high school coaches, the college coaches, the people believed in you before it was cool, before you were famous or anything. The just like your strength and conditioning coach, your nutritionist. It's just like it says, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to create a champion, and just to help athletes like get where they are. Regardless of where they end up making it. It's sponsors. It's so many like even just people who the media who interviews us and helps build our profiles and put our name out there. Like there's so many people, and there's so much appreciation that has to go into it, and even like your parents, and like my parents, my mom still like when I'm in camp, they'll help me out with certain things, and just to make my life easier so I can focus on the fight. My husband, like there's just so many, it's a village, and there's so many people, and I always try to like let them know how much I appreciate them, because I don't feel like it's just out me there when I get my hand raised. Like even when I don't get my hand raised, it's like all those people that believe in you, even the fans, all the support. There's just so much that goes into stepping into that cage.
Yeah, there really is. And a good brother of mine, Jalen Turner, and I know you know who Jalen Turner is. He just choked out Riddle in 45 seconds of round number one on his last fight, and they ranked him number 14 in the world. And he generally calls me after his fights. And he had called me after his fight, and I said, "I want you on Tuesday." And he said, "Don, why?" I said, "I want you on Tuesday." Because I never bring or call a fighter that wins onto the show. It's the fighters that, get taught a lesson that I'll give a phone call to, because a lot of time, like I said, the world forgets about them. And I don't forget about any fighter. I'll call him up and check on him. But I wanted him on my show because he had never been in the top 15 before. And I told him, I said, "Jalen, you're number 14 now. The last 10 years of your career is gone. It doesn't matter anymore." And he looked at me kind of crazy, and I said, "Bro, you got 13 stones in front of you." I said, "You got Hardy, you got Conor McGregor." I said, "Your world's just about ready to be flipped upside down." I said, "People that never wanted to deal with you before are now going to come into your life." I said, "MMA Junkie, Ariel Helwani, Joe Rogan." I said, he said, "I already know, bro. I already had to mow the yard, because there was too many snakes." And I said, "One thing you need to realize, Jalen, is the team that picked, the people that picked you up, the people that carried you, the people that got you to this point are the ones that you truly need to cling to." I said, "You don't need to change a thing, because they're the ones that got you there. You're, with them, you created greatness." I said, "So don't let anybody else in your life, because you're perfect." And he went on to do an interview with Ariel Helwani the next day. He came back, he said, Don, I'll never do another interview with him. And then I said, well, why? He said, he didn't even know what rank I was. He didn't even really know who I was. And see, that's where I see a difference in the sport and why I do my show the way I do. Because a lot of times you get handed a 3x5 card. You really don't know who's coming on your show until the very last minute. Because I was with ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox in the early days. And I wanted to be able to share the fighter in the full complexity, not just the warrior, but the person behind the warrior. And the reason I tell this story is because Jalen, you already know, Jalen's life is going to be flipped upside down, and everybody and their brother that didn't want anything to do with him is now going to try to correlate himself with him. But the thing about you is you keep creating greatness. And my brother Giovanni, he says, wrestling is considered better than striking nowadays. You're a hell of a wrestler too, but you're also great at BJJ. You know, a lot of people, I don't think they know that you were under, I think it's Reiner and Ryron and Relic Gracie, weren't you?
Oh, Hedon and Henner. Yeah,
Yeah.
were like my first instructors. Yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah. See, there's so many complexities, see, that not very many people know. Another brother of mine from Canada, he's kind of crazy, so don't mind him. He says, Simmer salute, Carla. You are an inspiring individual. You are important to this fight game girl. Love you much. Plus, I love my cookies also. And he says, hurrah. You know,
It's my kind of person. Gotta love the cookies.
I wish I could. I'm a diabetic. That it kind of sucks. But, you know, Carla, fast forward to this last fight with Doug Rose. It's kind of ironic, like I said, you know, that you become the first strawweight champion by beating Doug Rose. This last fight, man, it had me and my homies in the sport, especially in the UFC, we were all talking about it. It was probably one of the strangest fights that any of us have ever seen. You're the only one that was willing to initiate. You're the only one that was willing to fight. I know this firsthand, and anybody can call me a liar if they want, but you'll know I'm telling the truth. At a certain point in the fight, Coach Oyama told you just to stand in the center of the ring and told her, you know, come on. And she still refused. How did that play out in your head? Because that has to be the weirdest fight I've ever seen in my 37 years of being in this sport. You know, I know she lost to you the first time. Do you think, hypothetically thinking in the back of her head, that she knew that if she engaged with you, that you would totally dominate and still win the world title?
I don't know if she knew that, but I definitely think she potentially feared that. I don't know what was in her head, but I could only assume that she was waiting for me to make a mistake, or she was, just kind of had the fear of, the takedown, and just kind of a repeat of our first fight. It's hard to say. It was a very weird fight to be a part of, honestly. I remember being in my head being like, okay, it started kind of slow first round, like second round, it's gonna pick up, and then each round I kept just feeling like, what's happening? Like almost looking over my shoulder, like,
Yeah.
is this really happening right now? Like I was in disbelief almost in the fight. It was very weird to be a part of. I remember even in the fourth round or fifth round, I was like, what round are we in? Because it didn't really feel like I, wasn't very tired. Not much had happened. It kind of all was the same fight, each round. So I was like, I didn't really know what was happening. And, at the end of the day, like, people always have their, reasons in the fight, or, it's definitely a mental game. And I feel like she was prepared. She's a super skilled fighter, but, nobody can be perfect every fight and give the fans they want to see every fight. It's not just like one and done, but it
Yeah.
sucks because sometimes with the fans, it's like you're only as good as your last fight,
Yeah. Well, in this instance, I think she felt deep down, you know, whether she did or didn't, you know, think about it. When she went for the title the first time against you, she lost it via rear naked choke. And so, I mean, whether people say it or not, these things sit in your heart, they sit in your head, and you might not live it day by day, but I think in her fight camp, as the fight got closer, things started perplexing in her head. And I think she looked back over her shoulder and realized that, you know, Carla's no joke. She's one of the greatest champions to ever to hit the sport. And I think it kind of played on her a little bit. I think it got deep in her head, and I think she psyched herself out because even the referee didn't know what to do. I mean, he was confused with what to do because generally they force you to engage, and because she was skipping around the ring, I mean, what do? Stop her, go stop skipping and fight? I mean, it's kind of different. Me and Colin Oyama, we laugh about it, but in all seriousness, it was probably one of the weirdest fights I've ever seen in my entire life. I've never seen anything like that. The thing of it is, you are the current champion and you deserve it. And to see a smile on your face with a belt in front of you is tremendous because I know what it means to you. I know what it means to Team Oyama. You know, it's great to see you guys succeed because I even though I'm with Jackson Wink, I sent a fighter to Colin Oyama because I thought it would be the best fit for her. See, people need to realize in this sport, it isn't about us. It's about creating the greatest aspect and path for a fighter. You know, Colin Oyama has been one of the most tremendous men in my life. And I thank him for making this interview happen because you're hard to get a hold of. I've been trying to get a hold of you for a while now. But, you know, we do things for the right reasons. And Colin Oyama called me up and he was like, Don, you're with Jackson Wink. Why would you send me a fighter? Tell me why. And you know how he gets. And I was like, well, because I think she's better suited to no, tell me. And I was like, oh my God, and so I finally just told him because I believe in you. I think you're one of the greatest coaches in the sport. I said, and you're great with amateur fighters that are just turning pro. You have a special kind of ability that I don't see anybody else. And even though with Jackson Wink, it's in my heart to put a fighter in the most relevant place that they're going to grow, the truest place that they're going to grow. And I felt the place was with Colin Oyama. Joe Rice had said, I've never met, I've met lots of people since I've been in the sport, but I have to say, Carla has always been one that's never changed and has always been humble.
Oh, thanks, Joe.
Joe's trying to get brownie points. Don't let him fool you.
I love Joe. He's the best. Best, like I said, I've been wearing his mouth guards for like probably 10 years now. So
Oh, yeah, Joe's a great guy, and now that he's moved to Utah, he's a little bit closer to me, so I get to go out and see him. Um,
nice.
Sammy Carr wants to mess with you again. He says, because Don, the best he knows, he won't treat your. I can't even read that, bro. I can't even understand it. But the thing of it is, Carla, after all this greatness and everything, something tremendous happened in your life. You got married, you know, and a lot of people will say, it's the greatest day of their life. But, I know and my listeners are going to go, oh God, Don's going to tell this story again. But I'll just tell a quick version. I was homeless at 16 and I met a man that gave me an opportunity. And he gave me a job and a place to stay because I had a family that didn't want me. And I took him up on it. And then a couple months later, I met his granddaughter. Well, his granddaughter has been in my life for 41 years. I've been married to her for 38 years, and I have a 36-year-old son from her. So, marriage is a beautiful thing. What did it mean for you, Carla, to finally, I mean, because tying the knot is the best terminology for it. What did it mean for you to become fully grounded and finally walk that walk with your better half?
It was an amazing feeling. It's hard to compare it to anything else. I have to say, winning the belt the first time and then getting married, like tied for number one, best moment of my life. It's just knowing that you're making that commitment to someone who you love being around, who you can truly see a future with, who you want to build a future with, who you want to be better for.
Yeah.
Who you want, it makes you want to be a better person. It's a great feeling, and I'm very excited for the future. That's a great feeling.
Yeah, and I don't think people realize how young you truly are. I mean, my son is older than you. It's just kind of a trip. I'm sitting there
I
going,
feel like old in this sport, though. you know,
nah.
fighter old, but young overall though.
I'll disagree with that because even at 40 years old, my brother Dan Severn lied to the UFC and told them he was 30 when he was actually 40. And he beat some of the greatest fighters to ever step in an octagon. So age is only a number when you really want to look at it. I mean, it truly is. Carla, the thing that I admired about you, and I've always wanted you on my show because perseverance is truly a key word with me. And, like Ryan Blackorby, he commented earlier, and I had him on the show the other night, and I asked him, what did pride, passion, and perseverance truly mean to him? But I think I'm going to go a different angle with you because you've already been through those three aspects of life, but now you're at the top. So I'm going to add, instead of pride, passion, and perseverance, I'm going to add the word patience. What type of patience does it take for a champion like Carla Esparza? Because you're at the top of the world. You're considered one of the best strawweights in the sport and sporting history. How much patience, resilience does it take for you, champ, to sit back, stay calm, and remain the humble human being that you truly are? Because you're a great aspect in this sport. You don't talk down to anybody. You don't disrespect anybody. You're a true relevant warrior that, proves and makes her statements in the cage. So what does patience truly mean to the Cookie Monster?
I think patience is such a huge part of this sport, and just having that confidence that knowing if you take the right steps, I mean, you're going to get the best outcome. Not everybody's going to be a champion or a UFC champion, but we can be the best us we can be, and that's the only control we have. I told one of my teammates recently, if you left everything in the cage, you've done everything you can, and you can walk away with like this sense of satisfaction, just knowing that you did what you could. And I think just having that patience of like knowing that it's all going to work out. I'm going to keep doing the right steps. I'm going to keep treating people good. I'm going to keep showing up to training, doing all the things I need to do to be a good fighter. And at the end of the day, I want to reach for the stars and be the champion, but I was going to always be the best fighter that I could, to my abilities. And I've achieved that. And, I still have more to go, but I definitely feel that patience is important.
Yeah, patience is a key for a lot of people, and I think a lot of people need to understand that. Brian Hollerson, he says, your shows are always about the fighter, not the fight. It's great to get to know who they are. That's what I love to, because see, honestly, my show's really different than everybody else's, and that's why I like Ricky Simone, Alex Perez, Coach Oyama, and a lot of other fighters and legends in the sport. They like to come on. Granted, tonight I'm nervous with you on. I go figure. I get the one opportunity with you, and I get nervous. But it's not because I'm fanboyed. It's just because what I see in front of me is a woman that set out to create history, and it truly has. Someone that has persevered, overcome adversity to get up and create history again. Carly, you keep doing it time after time after time. And there's not another athlete in this sport that can truly say that they can even, fill half of your walk. Because I don't think a lot of people realize, like I said at the beginning of the show, you were the first strawweight champion in Invicta. Then you were the first strawweight champion in the UFC. And now here we are this many years later, and now you're the current champion in the UFC, a two-time current champion. To me, my friend, that's got to be one of the greatest feelings ever, because you know what? It's hard work, determination, and perseverance that pays off. How much has adversity played and created on the walk of Carla Esparza? How much has that determined, that factor? How much has it created in you as a warrior moving forward? I know when I lost my leg because of diabetes, I knew that I wasn't going to leave this sport. So I told myself, no matter what, not only was I going to get back to the sport, I was going to make it to where nobody knew I was missing my leg. And that was the greatest obstacle of my life. what did it mean for Carla Esparza to not only get over her greatest adversity in life, but to conquer it and move forward?
Life is full of adversity, and I think it's the way that we use it and the way we deal with it, and just trying to leave with a positive outlook and just learning from it. And I know it's easy to say that because life isn't easy. There's tough moments. Even if you just dial it down just to in the fight, I mean, sometimes things don't go how you plan. You go in with a game plan, and you think they're going to go left and they go right, and
Yeah.
just being able to think on the fly. And sometimes you're going to expect one thing and you end up on your back mounted in the first minute, which happened to me. And just being able to deal with that adversity and like think on the fly. And I think that's just kind of a really good analogy just for life. Sometimes you think something's going to go right or they go left, or sometimes you think life is going to go a certain way and it doesn't always. But it's just
Yeah.
kind of like not letting that hold down your mindset and just being like, well, it didn't go how I wanted, but I can feel sad a little bit, but I'm not going to dwell on it. I'm going to move forward. I'm going to learn from that, and I'm going to have a harder road than my friends over here, Tom, Dick, and Harry. But like, it doesn't matter because that's how much harder I have to work to make my dreams happen. And you just do it.
Yeah. A tremendous young boxer and photographer, and just a really all-around great guy from California, Nate Wren. He likes to give me a bad time because James Lights Out Tony nicknamed me Dandy Don, which I don't like the moniker, but when a legend gives you a moniker, you're kind of stuck with it. So he says Dandy Don McGuire is interviewing Carla the Cookie Monster Esparza, my favorite UFC fighter.
Thank
You
you.
know,
Nice.
and then he wants to know, how did you get your nickname, the Cookie Monster?
Well, talk about legends giving you a nickname. My coach, Carla Oyama, actually gave me that nickname when I had a pile of cookies. People bring snacks to the gym, and I was just, as usual, carrying about like 10 cookies out, probably eating one on my way out. And coach is like, "You're always eating cookies. You're such a freaking cookie monster." And I just looked at him like, whatever. And then he kind of started calling me that, and everyone started calling me that. And it got put on Sure Dog. And I was like, don't call me that. That's not tough. That's not a like tough nickname, but now I love it, and I've really taken to it. So
You see, this is what I love about you, because you truly are a happy individual in life. You love what you do. Ed Rogers says, what really amazing is she has had a smile on her face this whole interview. When you see her, she's always smiling. That's humble.
oh,
You really do, Carla. Sam Wilson's a good friend of mine. There's a lot of people that are good friends of mine that correlate themselves with you. And I think you're a tremendous individual on your walk. Another brother of mine from California, Marco Bassani, says Carla Esparza is a beast. You know, there's a lot of people that play prevalent roles in our life. And last year you and I both lost a prevalent part of our life, and that being Shannon Knapp's mother, Linda Houston. You know, it was hard for me because, from the early days, she used to come to the events to watch her to get sick to where she couldn't come to the events. And then I would live stream parts of because I shot for Invicta, and I would, do live streams just so she can see them, or she would watch it on television. And I would always inbox her special moments. And it kind of hit me hard the other day when Shannon Knapp and me were talking about me coming to the next Invicta and scouting fighters and looking to sign fighters. And for some reason in my memories, Linda popped up. And that's one damn thing I hate about Facebook memories, is because, the people that we correlated with, the people that we love, it always reminds us what we've lost. And it was a deep, dark day for me. You know, how hard is it for someone at your level to maintain that sense of being, knowing that there has been people on your walk that we've lost, because the last 3 years, none of us have ever walked this path before, but we lost a lot of people from the sport. How hard has it been on you, Carla, to pick up and move forward after losing, people that are so close to you that you've trained with, that have made a difference in your life? Because for me, it was horrific. And, every day I'm reminded, after 37 years of this industry, I made a lot of friends. So it's hard for me to pick up and move on, but you're at a much elevated level in this sport than I am. How hard is it for you, champ, to put that smile on your face that everybody sees, even though it may be the darkest day of your life at that moment? How hard is it for you to pick up and move forward?
Loss is never easy. If it's somebody who's older and lived a full life, that can be like a more easier transition. You can kind of look at it in a positive way. You never want to see somebody in pain or, like just pass away, especially if they're, young or just, but you never want to see that. And, I guess the way I try to look at it is, I don't really have any control of what's happened. And I go through my grief and I go through my sadness. And then I just try to honor people's memory, and I think of them fondly, and I think of the good times. That's all that I can do, and I just try to be positive, because being sad for them is probably not all the time for like years on, is probably not what that person wants. If you care about somebody and they care about you, like usually they want to see you happy and probably thinking of them fondly in the good times. So that's how I try to deal with it. Not that I don't get sad too, it's always hard to lose somebody.
Yeah. Well, this whole world's been flipped upside down. So to see you maintain the smile on your face and the walk that you do is tremendous. Because I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, Coach told you guys, this is your time. If you want opportunities, this is the time to take your opportunities. Alex Perez got a world title shot.
Yeah.
I was so happy for Team
And
Oyama.
fighting,
Huh?
like he's fighting in like 4 days or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's crazy. Like when I had Ricky on, I already knew the three opponents they had in front of them. And I said, Ricky, who do you really want to fight? And he said, Jack Shore. And then Jack Shore was listening to my show because it also plays in the UK at the same time. And Jack Shore took to Twitter that night. And everybody was, just blasted me from over the pond saying, your boy doesn't have a chance. Your boy doesn't have a chance. And from day one, I said, Ricky Simone is going to destroy Jack Shore.
Oh, he's so
And
talented. Yeah.
oh yeah, but me coach talked about this the other night, and it touched my heart because I believed in Ricky so much, and for him to get that opportunity to face Jack Shore, it just shows what type of mentality you fighters have out of Team Oyama. You don't care if you fight somebody in front of you, behind you, it doesn't matter, because you're proving to the world that you deserve to be where you're at, and that you truly are the best at what you do. And you know, it's weird because people say, "But Don, you're with Jackson Wink," but I just speak the truth. And Colin Oyama has created greatness in this sport, and I don't think there's another man that can honestly say that they created the path for the fighters like Colin Oyama did. That man's my true brother, and I don't care if anybody in this organization gets mad at me for what I say, but that man has helped me through moments where I didn't think I was going to live. So, and I'm not even tremendously close with him like you are. So I can only imagine what it's like to have him like a father figure, because he told me, he says, I look at Carla as she's my daughter. Like, and I sat back and I thought about that. And coach really doesn't say that much about too many fighters, but he believes in you. So I got one or two more questions. I'm sorry it took a little bit longer than I thought we would, but
No
you
worries.
know, the thing about it is now that you look back over your shoulder to that moment where you laid the first stone, the moment where you laid the second stone, now you've completed this path. What does that journey truly mean? Not as a warrior, but as a woman on your walk, because Dana White at one point said no woman would ever fight in the UFC. And then aspects of the sport perplex where oh, women fights are boring. We don't like this. But now women are the most entertaining aspect of a fight card for me. I'll be honest with you. We'll do like a LFA or a Bellator the night before, and then the next night do an Invicta, and we're like, yeah,
Yeah.
so now when you look over your shoulder and you look at the path that you created, what does it truly mean to Carla Esparza?
I'll be honest, I don't take too much time to look back and really like take it all in. Every once in a while I'll take those moments and I'll just be like, wow, like I was a part of
Yeah,
this amazing like journey. I've done some really cool things. I made a lot of history. I've been a part of a lot of things. I feel very grateful, and it's been an amazing journey, and I'm still on the journey, but
yeah.
I don't take too much time to reflect. I appreciate it for what it is, and I appreciate that I've been able to meet so many amazing people, have so many awesome fights. Like the experiences have been awesome, and I look forward. Hopefully, one day I look back to being in the Hall of Fame, and that'll be like the icing on the cake for me.
Yeah, it truly will. I'm gonna ask you one whimsical question, then we'll wrap things up. Carla, let's say you're walking down a path in the park and you come upon a puddle. And sometimes in life we get a brief reflection into who we are. Who does Carla Esparza see?
Um, I don't know. That's tough. I just I don't really look at myself too much. I don't take myself too seriously. I value like my values, and I value like my work ethic, and I just always see somebody that I'm proud of, but somebody that I always want to improve on and treat people better, and my family, my friends, like just everyone. And I want to be a good role model, and I hope, when I look at myself, that that's what I'm being. But I don't take myself too serious, to be honest. I'm just
You
just
remind me too much of Coach. You do, Coach. When I brought him on and I talked about Crew Rex, I think that's the only time I really got into his heart because Crew Rex was a tremendous individual.
yeah.
And I'll take that back. I got one more question before I hand you the mic. You know, with a belt in front of you, it's a beautiful moment. Because I personally felt that you would have won the fight anyway. And it's one of the weirdest fights in sports history. But with that belt sitting there in front of you, and you look at it, and let's say you had to open the diary or a book of Carla Esparza, and you had to put a statement about what that belt means on your walk in the third, the fourth, or fifth chapter, however you want to look at it. What analogy would you put in that book of Carla Esparza about the world title belt?
I guess for me, this is just a story of perseverance, of falling down and being able to pick yourself back up
That's
and
what I'm
not giving
saying.
up on yourself. And that was a huge thing for me. Is just no matter what people think, or no matter if it seems like things are hopeless, or you're at your lowest low, like don't ever feel that you know that I didn't ever felt like I couldn't build myself back up and find greatness again.
Yeah. And I'm going to end it on these two comments. Jonathan Cole says, Coach sees how real Carla is since she first started and walked the path. Tall and never wavering. She's sharp. She's a sharp, level-headed lady. I have to agree with you, brother. And Eric Prindle, a tremendous friend of mine, he says, awesome, brother. And then Jonathan Cole says, amen, Carla. Carla, you've got one of the greatest lives that anybody can ever ask for. And to top it off with getting married this year, it's, congratulations from me to you and the other half of your family. It's a beautiful moment in these dark times, but I want to thank you for coming on my show. I know my show is a little bit different, and it shares different aspects, but I don't know. Tonight I just got, for some reason, I was like, I got this. I got this. Because I've interviewed Pat
You have
Miletich,
it. You
everybody.
have it. It was great, and thank you so much for having me on, and thank you to all the fans who were writing in your comments. It was great to hear from you and hear all the support. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to hand the mic to you because I like to give the fighters the opportunity to give their friends, their family, their social media, their coaches, or just anything else they would like to add to the program. The floor is yours, champ.
Oh, just for like a shout out?
Yeah, well, to your family, your coach, whatever, anything, just your social media sites. I like
Oh,
to give the fighters an opportunity to share that aspect.
my Instagram and my Twitter are Carla Esparza one. You can find me Carla Esparza on my Facebook fan page. I made a TikTok, but I'll be honest, I'm kind of an old lady and I don't know how to use it. I've probably put like 2 videos on there, so I think it's Carla Esparza MMA or something. I'm not even sure, but look for me. I have 2 videos.
Yes. Well, champ, it was an honor for me. Keep creating greatness. I think you're one of the most humble fighters that has ever came into the sport. You truly deserve each and every opportunity that you've gotten. Keep proving to the world that you deserve to be the champion because you truly do. It's an honor to have you on my show. I look forward to the next time. With that being said, you have a tremendous night and God bless you, my friend.
Thank you so much. Have a
All
great
right.
night.
You
Bye.
too. Bye bye. Man, I got nervous. I am not going to lie. Thank you. I appreciate that. Uh, man, that's kind of crazy. It's like I've interviewed some of the greatest legends that have ever walked in this sport. But when I sat back and I thought about it, Carla Esparza was the first strawweight champion in Invicta. She vacates her belt. She goes to the Tough House, wins the 8-woman tournament, and she just thanked me for having her on. Thank you, Carla. I truly appreciate it. But the thing of it is I don't think anybody really sat back and realized the accomplishments of Carla Esparza. The first one in the history of Invicta to be the strawweight champion, the first one in the UFC to be the first strawweight champion in UFC history. And she choked out Rose Namajunas in that opportunity. And in this last fight with Rose, when she won the title back, Namajunas ran from her. You know, he says, "LOL, a little woman had you tongue tied." Hey, bro, you sit on my side and do what I do, Joe, and see if you can get through it. Yeah, she had me tongue tied because she truly is a tremendous warrior. She truly is a tremendous champion. And the thing that kind of sideswiped me is to think about it. No one ever can take away what she's done. She created history in Invicta. She created history in the UFC as the first strawweight women's world champion. There can never be a number two. So, it was an honor to see her get her belt back. Would I like to see her fight Rose Namajunas again? No. I don't think Rose deserves that opportunity to face Carla. I truly think that they need to get somebody up there that's willing to fight. I want to thank Colin Oyama for the opportunity tonight. Uh, yeah, right, Joe. She is a true champion, and I don't think most people really realize what she's done. And I didn't really realize it until I started thinking about it because I was with Invicta for that whole time. And when she left, she went to the Tough House. She went in the 16-woman tournament, and in the final, she won the world title against Rose in the UFC, and that was the first strawweight title ever given to a woman. And now she retains it again, and it's such a beautiful thing. I want to thank Colin Oyama, though. I'm gonna give a big shout out to my sponsors. I brought on a new sponsor in Hardy Boy Detailing here in Springfield, Missouri. So if you're listening to the show in Springfield, Missouri, Hardy Boy Detailing is a tremendous organization. I don't let many people put their name on my back. But Joe Rice is another one with Bite Me mouth guards. If you really want one of the best mouth guards in the industry, Joe Rice has been pumping them out since pretty much the beginning of the sport. So reach out to Joe and he'll shoot you out a kit. Uh, Tortilla Purchase, Finished MMA, uh, Cut Man for Hire, like I said, bite me mouth guards, the 86ers. You know, it's tremendous to have the backing that I do in this sport. Yeah, tonight was a little bit different for me. You guys caught me a little bit off guard, but how often do you get a woman that's created that much history in the sport? And you're right, Joe. She does smile all the time. I mean, I'm trying to ask a serious question, and she's got this big, beautiful smile on her face. So I don't know. Hey, not every one of my shows is going to be the best, but you know what? I'm blessed for the opportunity. So thank you, Coach Oyama, from the bottom of my heart. Thank all of you. God bless you, and have a good night.